The Bitchings of Victorian Women. These are real articles, advice columns, letters to the editor, and other selected writings from ladies' magazines published in the 1800s. This scathing letter to the editor was published in the August 1864 issue of Godey's Ladies' Book and Magazine. My dear Mrs. Hale, no one who reads the Ladies' Book attentively from year to year can fail to see and feel the high standard you have for women and the deep interest you take in their progress in all true virtue and right conduct. The dress patterns and the costumes are but the outward adorning of a person whose chief charms it is. Your desire should be humility, patience, gentleness, and godliness. I am sure that in expressing some of my ideas on the improvement of feminine character, its aims and occupations, I shall agree with you, and in the main object of your book. Of course, I can barely touch on many points, which, however, have their own importance. Other traits and principles there are, too important and too sacred to be talked of in a familiar letter, sketchy in its character, and aiming only at the correction of a few salient errors. If I talk of the duties of married women, I presuppose a desire to perform those duties and the fact that the relation has been entered into with suitable feelings and principles. The fact that the sentiments and feelings that induce marriage exist in their greatest force at a time of life when the judgment is still unripe is to me a proof that it is a relation intended by Providence to be fulfilled, without very special reference to any but a natural sympathy. The Apostle speaks of the believing wife as sanctifying the unbelieving husband. Qualities, tastes, and tempers the most diverse meet, and are formed into a compound soothing to the taste and feelings by the universal solvent, love. That they love each other is the ultimate reason of a harmony, better than any prearranged concords that can be devised by the judgment of friends, the care of parents, the sharp eyes of guardians. Two persons of exactly diverse notions on 1,000 subjects cannot live apart without suffering and sorrow. Their happiness is in being together. That their happiness does not continue always is their misfortune and their fault, but not a necessity of the case. If they could be very happy together before marriage, why not after? And this is the one thing I wish to say through your ladies' book to the young wives who, finding married life is not all couleur de rose, jump to a conclusion that it is of the colour of a thundercloud. Somebody has written an excellent essay on the art of living happily with others. It is the art of all arts, which the young married women should study. If you can alienate your friends, your casual companions, by dwelling continually on the differences instead of the agreements in your opinions and habits, how much sooner the daily companion of your innermost life. You started in that life with a full knowledge of these differences. Why insist now on agreements? A thorough, complete conviction of the difference of men is the great thing to be assured of in social knowledge, says somebody. It is to life what Newton's law is to astronomy. Many persons will agree at once to this axiom. They feel it in their relations with the world at large. They do not expect to drive their own opinions of things, their own peculiar tastes into the outer world, but into their inner one, into the circle around the fireside, into the sanctuary, where should meet only quiet enjoyment and gentle, soothing influences. They insist on an impossible union of sentiments and opinions. Yet why desire this union? One might as well complain of the diversities of flower and fruit, the infinite varieties of earthly objects, the multitudinous differences of stars. For the best of reasons, it has seemed fit for the maker and ruler of all that there should be infinite diversities. Yet the same spirit, that of gentleness, yielding the recognition of each individual soul's right to its own tastes and opinions, the same spirit might and should be in us all. It is so in general society to a considerable extent. The general course of feeling would be continually turbid and morose without this spirit. But, as I said before, it is too often dismissed from the domestic circle just when and where it is most needed. In proportion to the intimacy of the social and domestic relations, should be the care never to infringe on personal rights and peculiarities. You will say perhaps that this is quite impossible, that your husband's notions on some subjects are erroneous, that his tastes are ridiculous, that his presents are unsuitable, his opinions decidedly wrong. Not all these things at once. Possibly it may take 10 years to bring you to the conclusion. You will, at about the same time, find out that you are an unhappy, neglected, ill-used wife, and ought never to have been married at all to the man you did marry. Very good, or rather very bad. Some of our young women, let us hope but a very, very small portion of them, at this point of their character and moral existence, make the fatal mistake of seeking for a new affinity and for happiness in a new form. The legalized conditions of separation are eagerly sought for. The only desire seems to be freed from a bondage which has become hateful, and to bind themselves anew with chains whose rose wreaths again conceal their iron. Not the less must you fret and chafe under your new fetters, even on the supposition that the fatal facility of separation were to give you comparative ease by inducing a variety in your suffering. Still, not the less must you suffer, until you change your whole principle of action. Setting aside all the derangement of family relations, the necessary suffering entailed on innocent children, the uncounted consequences of wrong actions in all directions, setting aside all these, you have gained absolutely nothing. You begin the same old error. Your husband's conduct, opinions, tastes are again under the domestic microscope. His failings assume gigantic proportions. What was a harmless animal cule becomes by constant and minute attention magnified into a horrible monster with heads and horns. Slight ebullitions of temper are met by sulky astonishment and magnified into quarrels. Every sweet bell becomes jangled and out of tune. In proportion to your isolation from general observation becomes your sensitiveness to every fault and peculiarity. And in proportion to your mutual sensitiveness is your reproductive irritation. You become, each of you, uncomfortable and unhappy, and all simply because you begin to go on upon a wrong principle. You might be divorced as fast as you become unhappy. And how is your happiness, setting aside all other motives, to be improved? How were you comfortable and happy at home before your ill-fated, ill-assorted, always to be deplored marriage? Were you not the daughter to whom Papa could refuse nothing? Do you remember whether you gained this parental fondness by sulkily exaggerating every difference of opinion and taste between yourselves? Or did you always exhibit a gentle consideration for his bursts of impatience? Did you meet his vexed, weary, tired face at night with angry, mortified silence? Or did you meet him with cordial smiles, pleasant news of the day's doings, silently overlooking of whatever you knew by experience to be his very unpleasant mood? Nay, do I not know very well that you never asked him a favour until after dinner, when you had lighted his cigar, and, as it were, coaxed him with your filial endearments into good humour with himself and all the world, and of all the world most, his pet and loving daughter? If the great principles of Christianity, which should underlie all our social intercourse, and make domestic life the soother and comforter it might be if those principles were not only recognised, but acted upon. Of course, there would be no need of any expostulations or admonitions on this subject. But most people recognise principles, not all by any means act on them. 1,000 daily irritations, sacrifices, vexations need the application of these principles, and we can never be happy till we apply them. You cannot reason about these irritations. You may undertake to talk and dispute about them if you want to begin an unhappy life. Dr. Johnson says, "Wretched would be the pair, above all names of wretchedness, who should be doomed to adjust by reason every morning all the minute details of a domestic day." Even if you could settle everything by talking and disputing about it, there is no time to do it, and nothing is worth this perpetual disputing and settling. When you have learned to yield, you have begun the first step towards enjoyment of your married life. The next will be a retracing of the old paths into the feeling with which you began that life. It was a true love which made sacrifice nothing, the desire that your husband should be happy, everything. If you do not thus yield, nay, even if you conquer in your disputes, what shall you have gained? Not your husband's increased love, certainly not your own happiness. French novel writers and modern sentimentalists have done a world of harm in corrupting the straightforward simplicity and rectitude of our young women. Instead of keeping their own hearts and tempers with all diligence, they are looking out for wants and errors in the companions they have chosen. Instead of humility and self-distrust, they are become critical and ungenerous to the inevitable failings of their husbands, and instead of sanctifying with their own holy purposes and Christian efforts the unbelieving husbands, they make the married relation a hateful bond. There are many outside reasons for this frequent effect on domestic happiness, some based on the modern modes of living, to which I may hereafter refer, but I have already exceeded the limits of a letter. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to the channel. Until the next video, I bid you good day.